1993 left. I'm the third on the left.
We don't know anything. We just
On
got it in the
Catherine.
mail. And, so that's what we're here for information.
So White House, what's in last week's team?
The one strip.
I've just lived there 4 years now.
What does it show with Kathleen?
Exactly.
Stop. Her name is Christina. So she's not going to speak. Okay. She's doing the music.
That's the first thing after on that agenda.
Come to the easement there.
I thought you were doing
Come to the easement.
So they're gonna let us know. They're gonna present it.
And we're going down too. So. Oh yeah. Yeah, but she said to bring it to allow the commercial to do a lot of residential.
All right, good morning, everybody. Let's see, let me call this meeting to order, and if we could, just please stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. The meeting of the Escambia County Planning Board for August 1st is hereby called to order. We've got 5 members present. We do have a quorum. Please remember to turn off your cell phones at this time. And do we have proof of publication?
Yes, sir.
Did the publication meet all legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
The chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal advertisement.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. The rezoning meeting minutes from the previous meeting dated July 13th, 2023 have been provided to the board members. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? The chair will now entertain a motion to accept the rezoning meeting minutes into evidence.
So moved. Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All right, that motion carries. The rezoning hearing packet for August 1st with findings of fact has been provided to the board members. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the rezoning hearing package with findings of facts and legal advertisement into evidence. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, the rezoning hearing package and findings of fact and legal advertisement will be marked and included into the record for all of today's cases. Will the court reporter please swear in members of the staff?
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, the board has previously qualified staff to offer expert testimony in the area of land use and planning. Does anyone have any questions regarding their qualifications or ability to offer expert testimony? All right. Good morning. At this hearing, the planning board is acting under its authority to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, the BCC, on rezoning applications. These hearings are quasi-judicial in nature, and quasi-judicial hearings are like evidentiary hearings in a court of law, however less formal. All testimony will be given under oath, and anyone testifying before the planning board may be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits that the planning board considers will be entered into evidence and made part of the record. Opinion testimony will be limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence in the record. Before making a decision, the planning board will consider the relevant testimony, the exhibits entered into evidence, and the applicable law. Each individual who wishes to address the planning board must complete a speaker request form and submit to the planning board clerk. These forms are on the table in the back of the boardroom. You will not be allowed to speak until we receive a completed form. Please note that only the individuals who are present and give testimony on the record at this hearing before the planning board will be allowed to speak at the subsequent hearing before the BCC. No new evidence can be presented at the BCC meeting. Therefore, all testimony and evidence must be presented today. The planning board will provide a recommendation for each rezoning request to the BCC, which will review testimony, documents, and exhibits, consider the closing arguments, and make a final decision. All decisions by the BCC are final. Anyone who wishes to seek judicial review of the decision of the BCC must do so in a court of competent jurisdiction within 30 days of the date the BCC approves or rejects the recommended order of the planning board. All written or oral communications outside of this hearing with the members of the planning board regarding matters under consideration today are considered ex parte communications. Ex parte communications are presumed prejudicial under Florida law and must be disclosed as provided in BCC Resolution number 96-13. As each case is heard, the chair will ask that any board member who have been involved in any ex parte communication please identify themselves and describe the communication. As required by Section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code, the Planning Board's recommendation on the BCC shall include consideration of the following 6 approval conditions. The applicant has the burden of presenting competent, substantial evidence to the reviewing board establishing that the requested zoning would contribute to or result in a logical and orderly development pattern. The appropriate surrounding area within which uses and conditions must be considered may vary with those uses and condition and is not necessarily the same area required for mailed notification. A logical and orderly pattern shall require demonstration of each of the following conditions. Condition A, consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed zoning is consistent with the future land use FLU category as prescribed in LDC Chapter 3 and with all other goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. If the rezoning is required to properly enact a proposed FLU map amendment transmitted for state agency review, the proposed zoning is consistent with the proposed FLU and conditional to its adoption. B, consistent with zoning district provisions. The proposed zoning is consistent with the purpose and intent with any other zoning establishment provisions prescribed by the proposed district in Chapter 3. Compatible with surroundings, all the permitted uses of the proposed zoning, not just those anticipated by the rezoning applicant, are compatible as defined in Chapter 6 with the surrounding uses. The uses of any surrounding undeveloped land shall be considered the permitted uses of the applicable district. Compatibility is not considered with potential conditional uses or with any non-conforming or unapproved uses. Also, in establishing the compatibility of a residential use, there is no additional burden to demonstrate the compatibility of specific residents or activities protected by fair housing laws. D is spot zoning, where the proposed zoning would establish or reinforce a condition of spot zoning as described in Chapter 6. The isolated district would nevertheless be transitional in character between the adjoining districts, or the differences with those districts would be minor or sufficiently limited. The extent of those mitigating characteristics or conditions demonstrates as an appropriate site-specific balancing of interests between the isolated district and adjoining lands. Appropriate with changed or changing conditions. If the land uses or development conditions within the area surrounding the property of rezoning have changed, the changes are to such a degree and character that it is in the public interest to allow new uses, densities, or intensities in the area through rezoning. And the permitted uses of the proposed district are appropriate and not premature for the area or likely to create or contribute to sprawl. At the beginning of each case, as long as there are no objections from the applicant, we will allow staff to briefly present the location and zoning maps and photos of the property. Next, we will hear from the applicant and the witnesses that they may wish to call. Then we will hear from the staff and any witnesses they may wish to call. And then finally, we will hear from the members of the public who have filled out one of the speaker request forms. All right. And today we had 2 cases on our agenda here. One, they've asked to continue it on to the September meeting, and that was the second case we were going to hear today, so we'll just jump right in. We've got the first rezoning application for consideration is Z-2023-17. The applicant is Buddy Page, agent for Eric Gleaton. Property is 1019 West Leonard Street. Property size is 0.44 plus or minus acres. And the request is from high density residential district, 18 dwelling units per acre, to commercial district, 25 dwelling units per acre. Members of the board, have there been any ex parte communication between you, the applicant, of the applicant's agents, attorneys, or witnesses with fellow planning board members or anyone from the general public prior to this hearing? Have you visited the subject property? And also please disclose if you or a relative or business associate of the applicant or the applicant's agent.
No to all?
No to all. No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
All right. So we'll get into this. Staff, was notice of this hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
Great. Was notice of the hearing posted on the subject property?
Yes, sir.
All right. And applicant, are you okay with us going with the photos first? Okay, great. Staff, will you now present the maps and photographs for this case?
Yes, good morning. Allison Lindsay, Urban Planner Development Services. Z 2023-17. This is the location map showing the parcel on Leonard Street. And this is the zoning showing the current HDR and the surrounding. This is the future land use, mixed use urban. This is the existing land use of the properties around the subject parcel. And this is the redevelopment map showing it's in the Inglewood redevelopment area. This is the aerial map of the site. And this is the public notice sign that was posted on Leonard Street. This is the public notice sign that was posted on G Street. This is looking at the east side of the property. And this is looking east along Leonard Street from the subject property. This is looking west from the subject property on Leonard. Looking along G Street from the subject property. This is looking across G Street from the subject property. And this is on G Street looking north toward Leonard Street. This is looking northwest across Leonard. Looking southeast across Leonard Street. That's the maps and photographies.
All right. Thank you. Applicant, would you please come forward? And we'll get you sworn in if we can at this time. All right. Mr. Page, if you'll please state your full name and address for the record for us.
Good morning, Board. Buddy Page, 5337 Hamilton Lane in Pace with Professional Growth Management Services, LLC.
Great. And then did you receive a copy of the rezoning hearing package with the findings of fact for today?
I have.
Great. And do you understand that you have the burden of providing by substantial competent evidence that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and is not in conflict with any portion of the county's development code?
I do.
All right, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this particular location on Leonard Street, kitty-cornered across from some of the Sheriff's Department's activities, has a long history of being a commercial use. And I don't think I see anybody on this board that's old enough to probably remember it was used by Black and White and Tucker Taxi over the years, which on occasions was a 24-hour a day type operation. But this particular location, Mr. Chairman, I've heard talk about some comment that the residents did not want any more bars or the possibility of any bars in the area. I think it would be well to probably state that the site is located within 1,000 feet of a church, and even if the applicant wanted to do that, he could not do that based upon being precluded with that rule and regulation that the county's had for a number of years. So there's no possibility that a bar could be eventually built on that particular corner. Mr. Chairman, going through the approval conditions under the consistency with the comprehensive plan, I read that the staff finds that it is compatible with the provisions of the comprehensive plan under A, and under B, consistent with district zoning provisions from the Land Development Code. I note that the findings from the staff says that under their information, it says the property is along a collector roadway where commercial uses are existing. The property is not abutting single-family residential districts of RR, LDR, or MDR, and is within 1/2 a mile from the intersection of an arterial or collector street. Therefore, it meets locational criteria as stated at LDC, thus and so. However, due to the increased intensity in commercial districts, staff recommends going to HDMU, which allows a mix of residential and commercial uses, and that was something that has been considered. Item C, compatibility with surrounding uses. Mr. Chairman, I think if I could at this point ask for a map of the, well, here it is here. If you could go to the zoning map that shows those parcels, please. Mr. Chairman, you will notice that there is commercial directly kitty-cornered across the street from that particular piece that's being outlined there. And of course, the major intersection just to the east, 1 block, you'll see a large commercial classification that's probably within 200 feet of the site itself. It's a large church zoned commercial. And I might point out too that across the street and kitty-cornered to the northwest, where it says PUB, public, even though it says public in terms of the actual use of the property, that's a sheriff's dispatch location where as many as 200 or so officers are in and out of that site every day using their cars. So in terms of traffic impact and use in that area, you can't just discount the fact that's public, so we don't discount that. Fact of the matter is, those are cars that are on the street, and they do present a consideration in terms of what's going on in the area. So, Mr. Chairman, under item D, appropriative spot zoning, the finding says the request for zone commercial would be considered spot zoning as there are no other commercially zoned parcels adjacent to the subject property. However, the majority of uses along Leonard Street are commercial in nature. So, Mr. Chairman, item criteria C, or E rather, appropriate with change or changing conditions. Findings read a couple of sentences. The land uses or development conditions within the areas surrounding the property of rezoning have not changed. Zoning categories within the area have remained high-density residential. However, some parcels have operated for commercial prior to the adoption of the Land Development Code in 2015. The request for commercial potential uses, densities, and intensities allowed in the district would not be compatible with existing surrounding commercial or development patterns. And with that, I go back and read a question here that our statement under criteria D that says the proposed amendment is compatible. This is under criteria C, findings. The proposed amendment is compatible with surrounding existing commercial uses in the area. Within 500 feet of the radius, staff identified properties are high-density residential, high-density mixed use, public, and commercial zoning districts. The existing uses along Leonard Street consist of a church, residential, and non-residential uses. So, Mr. Chairman, we feel that the request that we made to go from the existing zoning category to commercial fits in. Certainly, the staff agrees on several points to that answer. We would request the board's consideration to approve a rezoning that would move it to the commercial status. Again, restating, because of the interest I understand that there is, Bars are not allowed within 1,000 feet of the church, and the church is within a couple hundred feet of the property itself, so that precludes any discussion. Certainly we can have discussion, but it precludes any possibility of that being converted into a bar at some future date. That's all I have.
All right, does anyone have any questions at this time?
I'd ask Mr. Page, is there a particular use that the applicant has in mind that wouldn't be allowed under HDMU, that would be under commercial, or is it just for the sake of?
There's not, other than, and he's certainly not thinking about a bar in the area. He owns the property, he's rented it out for years, but it's always been a bonds type operation that'll be there for 6 months and then leave. And he's looked at some of the other things that are allowed under a slightly higher zoning category and thought that's what I need to go to. Maybe I could keep it rented out in one of those categories. But a specific use, he's never identified it, Mr. Powell.
All right, anybody else? I do have one question. Now, I just want to make clear, I know you're saying that the owner doesn't want to put a bar here, but they certainly could go to the BOA for a variance or conditional use to put a bar there if they so wished and go through this process again. Is that correct?
That's correct. He'd have to
Okay.
come back here in front of the same group, same advertising for the citizens.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make that clear. That is, could still be an option for the future, but I know that's not your client's intent. So. All right, staff, if you'd like to go through your presentation at this time.
Yes, sir. Again, Allison Lindsay, Urban Planner Development Services. So this is a request at 1019 West Leonard Street to go from HDR, high density residential at 18 dwelling units an acre, to commercial at 25 dwelling units an acre. The first criteria A is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed amendment to commercial is consistent with the intent and purpose of the future land use, which is mixed use urban. Mixed use urban allows for residential and commercial uses. Criteria B, consistent with the zoning provisions. The property is along an arterial roadway where commercial uses are existing. The property is abutting HDR zonings, but it is not abutting the single-family residential zoning districts of RR, LDR, or MDR, which is part of the requirements of the zoning district. It is within half a mile of the intersection with an arterial or collector roadway. Therefore, it does meet the locational criteria as stated in 3-2.10E. However, due to the increase in the intensity of the commercial district, staff would recommend going to HDMU, which would allow for a mix of residential and commercial uses and would promote a traditional zoning that would be consistent in the area. The property is also in the Inglewood redevelopment area, and the community redevelopment staff provided comments and agreed with our staff that the HDMU would be more appropriate zoning. And to note that in 3-2.10G, restaurants including on-premise consumption of alcohol are allowed as long as it's not within 200 feet of LDR or MDR zoning. Criteria C, compatible with surrounding uses. So the proposed amendment, we said, was compatible with the surrounding existing commercial uses in the area. Within the 500-foot radius, staff identified properties that are high-density residential, high-density mixed-use, public, and commercial zonings. The existing uses along Leonard Street consist of a church, non-residential uses, and residential uses. However, the upzoning to commercial would allow more intense commercial activities in this area with the residential homes. Appropriative spot zoning. The request to rezone to commercial would be considered spot zoning as there is no other commercially zoned parcels adjacent to the subject property. However, the majority of the uses along Leonard Street are commercial in nature, as well as there are residential uses on Leonard and down G Street. And the hopes was not to take more of the commercial down to the residential on G Street. Appropriate if changed conditions. The land uses or development conditions within the area have not changed. The zoning categories within the area have remained high-density residential at 18 dwelling units per acre. However, some parcels have operated their commercials prior to the adoption of the LDC in 2015. The request to commercial at 25 dwelling units an acre, the potential uses, densities, and intensities allowed by the district would not be compatible with the existing surrounding development patterns, as they would be more dwellings allowed and more intense uses, and would not create or contribute to the urban sprawl. And that's staff's analysis.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this point?
And if I may, Chairman, I would like to add something, if I may.
Yes, sir.
As Allison stated so very, very well, high-density mixed use, it does allow for a lots of retail services. As a matter of fact, the operation that they're basically is a personal service. It can go there, so retail services. So that's why staff made a recommendation that to be consistent and compatible, especially with the impact of that HDR, which you have residential and you have commercial right there, to keep it consistent with allowing those retail services to still go there, because I want to understand this, that when you start bringing in more, looking at all of the potential use of that commercial, that could have an enormous impact on that area. And we already know that the area is challenged. That's why the CRA area, and they are responsible for those redevelopment areas, and they have plans, they have things going to basically try to improve it and without making it worse. That's why they say, yes, staff, we do recommend high-density mixed uses. It does allow for commercial uses, but there are size limitations, there are constraints. And if that building is already there, basically, now if you want to bring in more uses, that may require a whole bunch of other things they may not be ready to get into yet. But the high-density mixed use, with the building already there, staff strongly recommend that with this lower zoning, with consistency and compatibility, that I'd be good with the area being that it is a redevelopment area, and not to make any more harder or impactful uses that could come with this commercial upzoning.
Yes, sir, and Mr. Chairman, too, with the HDMU, like Mr. Jones said, the 6,000 square feet or less per lot for development, you could still have restaurants, and they'd have to go to conditional use if they wanted to have the alcohol with the church nearby. But the HDMU would be, well, with the commercial aspect, even though you saw the map had commercial surrounding, and even some of the uses are commercial, but each rezoning case stands on its own, and so just because across the street or next door is commercial isn't a reason or criteria to make this one become commercial just because it used to be, or there's one across the street. So, we were trying to look at the neighborhood as a whole, and, community redevelopment area being Inglewood. They also agreed that the commercial would be a little more intense, and the HDMU would allow some of the same commercial uses, just not at the same density as the commercial.
Right. It'll be more control, and which that's the purpose. You want to have logical, you want to have orderly development. You want to, you especially with areas, you don't want to make it worse. You want to try to still let opportunity for growth, but within some limitations. Which the high density mixed use. If you look at the map, you got HDR all around there, and you do have, and those are homes. Those are single family homes that, yes, they still need the adequate protections against impactful uses like sometimes that commercial could bring.
All right, did anyone have any questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just one question. Horace, how close is Macmillan School to that?
That's a good point. It really is not too far from it. I mean, it's in the same. It's not too far at all.
I've been there. I
Yeah,
didn't know it was outside that circle in. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the boys club is right there as well. So you really want to try to protect those neighborhood type usage that's already been there, and you don't want to exacerbate it by bringing in more intrusive uses.
All right, anyone else? All right, at this time we'll go into public comment. For those members of the public who wish to speak on this matter, please note that the planning board bases its decision on the approval conditions and exceptions described in section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code. During our deliberations, the board will not consider general statements of support or opposition. Accordingly, please limit your testimony to the approval conditions and exceptions described in section 2-7.2. Please also note that those individuals who are present and give testimony on the record at this hearing before the planning board will be allowed to speak at the subsequent hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. And I've got one speaker form for this case, and that's Priscilla McCorvey. Hey. And if you'll just please come forward and state your name and address for the record and be sworn in for us.
Good morning. My name is Priscilla Royston McCorvey. I reside at 3112 West Blunt Street, but I'm a partial owner of 1105 West Leonard Street for the past 64 years.
Okay, and then we can just get you sworn in. Yes, ma'am.
Testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. I have been a resident, partial owner for 64 years. I was raised on that street. The reason that I'm here is that we have communicated with the property owners adjacent to us, which is 1019 West Leonard Street. And the area is like Mr. Jones said, it's a high density. It's commercial, but we are aware that businesses must go on. However, it's a high crime area just as well. Commercials have been around. The Boys and Girls Club is there, was previously the Escambia County Recreation Center. And we don't want anything that is going to disturb the area. Excuse me. As I said, we don't want no bars. We don't want no car lots. The previous owners have respected my parents' home and residence. We have gotten along. Anything after 5 o'clock is settled. That is still a residential area. We don't want anything, like I said before, to disrupt that area. We want a low, laid-back area. If any way they could respect the resident, everybody that lives pretty much there are elderly. And we do want something that's going to benefit the area, not going to disturb the area. Previously, we did talk to Mr. Robert, they wanted something else, but then they respected us and say, hey, this is a residential area. So if the board could consider the crime, the children, the schools, and like I said, the police department, even with them there, the traffic was low. They still there. We went from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. And we don't want anything that is going to disrupt the neighborhood, and they could be respectable neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. Did anybody have questions for the witness or no? Okay. All right. At this point, Mr. Page, did you want to add anything, or are you good?
Just one speaker.
That was it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, as indicated earlier, the owner of the property would consider the HDMU category for the purposes of the request here before the board this morning. We have no questions of the speaker, but as I indicated at the start, he would consider that HDMU, and that's what we would request the staff, or rather the board consider the
Okay.
request for that.
Thank you. Of course, in a case like this, is there anything that we need to do other than if that's what the board would like?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This is a down zoning. Thank you. This is a down zoning, so that can be done. A recommendation can be made for that lower zoning at this planning board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on that from the board? I'll entertain a motion to approve zoning of HDMU for case Z-2023-17.
So moved. Seconded.
Got a motion is second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
All right. At this time, we will, as I mentioned earlier, case Z-2023-18, the case for Mobile Highway is getting pushed to September's rezoning meeting. So we will adjourn the rezoning meeting, and we will move into our regular planning board meeting. All right. We do have, what is there, 6 of us? We've got a quorum up here, so we're good to go. Did we have proof of publication?
Yes, sir.
Did the publication meet all legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
The chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal advertisement.
So moved.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? The planning board meeting for July 13th has previously been provided to the board members. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the planning board meeting minutes into evidence. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries. The planning board hearing package for August 1st, 2023 has been provided to the board members. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the planning board hearing package and the legal advertisement into evidence. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, today we have got 2 items here. We've got a public hearing concerning the review of an ordinance amending the future land use map, SSA-2023-06, that the board review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners an ordinance amending Chapter 7, the future land use FLU element policy, FLU 1.1.1, to provide an amendment to the map, amendment to the 2030 FLU map, SSA-2023-06, changing the FLU category of one parcel located within Section 12, Township 3S, Range 32 West, parcel number 12-3S-32-5001-001-003, totaling 3.4 plus or minus acres, located at 13040 Gulf Beach Highway, from commercial to mixed-use suburban. All right. At this time, I think we've got the applicant. Is that Bo Bryant? Would you like to come forward at this time?
Good morning, Bo Bryant, Bowman Construction, 74 Star Lake Drive, Pensacola, Florida, and we're here to talk about this FLU change.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So did you want to?
We just feel there's a possibility that the flexibility of the residential property there is a good, that's an increase in the areas for more residential dwellings, and we don't see no conflict with the LDC on that at all, or any with the area. So.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions at this time, or do we want to go through maybe some of the photos and stuff first?
I'm just going to ask staff in conjunction with you, what is the purpose of the small, the FLU change? What can you do with, that you can't do in commercial?
Residential. We're gonna add some residential. We want to do residential over there.
Okay,
That's the only addition to that.
okay.
It's no increase in the density or anything, or coverage, it's
Right.
the same density and all that.
Yeah, I didn't know, because I saw 2 things in there, mixed use versus apartments. And it's a good thing in this, it's not a zoning, because I've had more people call, and you know our area over there, you're
Yeah.
close enough in Star Lake. I have had more
Right,
people freaking out thinking, oh my God, there's another storage unit. And I said,
No,
just hold
no,
on.
no.
I said, it's a future land use, a small scale amendment change.
Right.
I said, I'm certain that they're simply trying to get consistent. County, help me out if this, because I have a feeling you were somewhat guided by the county to get down this path. But there is a great deal of fear, and I would really tell you to champion communication with people.
Yeah.
You want friends, not foes, when you come back here, because please go.
Sure. Andrew Holmer, Escambia County Development Services Department. The zoning on site is heavy commercial, light industrial. That allows up to 25 units per acre residential. But if it's in a commercial future land use category, which this currently is, that residential use has to be limited. It has to be has to be a predominantly commercial use on the site. So it severely limits your residential opportunities. When you see these cases, we've had a number of these over the years where someone has a commercial flu and they want to drop down to mixed use urban. That's generally why they're doing it. In fact, I don't think we've had anyone do that for any other reason than to allow them to put in a predominantly residential use.
So I want to get this straight. The, the flu is commercial. The actual zoning is heavy commercial, light industrial, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was struggling with a little bit last night. But, yeah, I get the residential. I know there's just a great deal of hand wringing on our side of the world over there for your benefit to know that future use.
Anyone else at this time? All right. Staff, do you want to run through your presentation and then we'll get you back up here in a little bit? Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Christina Smith, Urban Planner for Development Services. This is a small-scale amendment for 13040 Gulf Beach Highway. And this is a location map. And this is the radius for the zoning. This is a current future land use map. This is the proposed future land use map. This is the AIPD map showing the parcels partially in it. And this is the aerial map. This was a sign posted on the property on July 17th. This is looking on the subject property. This is looking east from the subject property. This is looking west from the subject property. And this is looking at the subject property from across the street on Gulf Beach Highway. And that ends the photography. The small-scale amendment to the future land use flu map of Escambia County proposes to change the flu category of a vacant 3.4 plus or minus acre parcel from commercial to mixed-use suburban, MUS. The zoning designation of the subject parcel is heavy commercial and light industrial, HCLI, and is also within the AIPD airfield overlay. A flu change to MUS will allow residential development within the existing zoning district, regardless of the primary commercial component as currently required by the existing commercial flu. And for compliance review, for the need and benefit, a conversion to MUS would provide for a mix of residential development and heavy commercial light industrial uses. The change would promote compatibility infill development, allowing for a mix of residential and commercial uses. Professional practices. The existing future land use for the area is commercial, and a change to MUS would still allow commercial uses while providing more flexibility for residential uses. The Flume Amendment conditions. The proposed amendment complies with all three conditions established by Florida statutes. Do I have to read the statute? Okay. For the adoption of the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment, the subject parcels, for A, the subject parcels totaling 3.5 plus or minus acres is a use of 50 acres or fewer. The proposed amendment does not involve a text change to the comprehensive plan, but only proposes a land use change to the future land use map for a site-specific small-scale development activity. The property that are the subject of the proposed amendment is not within a designated area of critical state concern. Regarding housing, the proposed mixed-use suburban flu would be a suitable replacement of the existing commercial flu, and as a result would not allow for more intense uses and density that what is currently allowed for the largely commercial surrounding areas. Future land use. The future land use categories in this area are commercial, MUS, recreation, and MUU, which support a mix of residential and non-residential development. The change to MUS would not change the area characteristics while allowing for residential development. Infrastructure. Sewer and potable water are available through ECUA. According to ECUA, there appears to be a sewer main adjacent to the property that could be potentially tied into. However, there are large diameter force mains within considerable pressure, so it would be up to ECUA regional service staff to approve the connection. Solid waste disposal. ECUA provides potable water distribution and sanitary sewer collection and treatment and solid waste collection and disposal for the subject parcel. Regarding transportation and mobility, the transportation staff has reviewed the future land use case, SSA-2023-06 commercial to MUS agenda item. And they've stated that further traffic analysis will be required through the development review process concerning warrants for turn lanes to serve the site and LOS capacity of Gulf Beach Highway. We strongly encourage working with the development to the north to share the existing driveway and make improvements there as warranted to provide interconnectivity between uses. Please note that TTO's review is solely based on the rezoning application submittal package, so the comments above hold no bearings of the TTO comments made during the development review process. Regarding wellheads, the subject parcel is outside of the wellhead protection area based upon Escambia County GIS. Historical significant sites. The applicant provided a letter from the State of Florida Division of Historical Resources indicating no presence or absence of historical significant sites as the parcel is currently vacant commercial. Prior to any future development order, a historical analysis must be completed. Regarding wetlands and habitat, there are no indications from the available National Wetland Inventory map that wetlands are on the parcel. If any protected trees are located for future map new development, they will be analyzed for compliance with all applicable environmental regulations prior to an issue of a development plan approval.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff? All right. We have no speakers on this case. And Mr. Brown, I didn't know if you want to add anything else or all set. Okay.
I have a question of staff. Staff, in the school analysis showed a yield of like 80 some odd units for this piece of property. If you take that on 3 acres, which I find challenging, to say the least, but if you were to look at the commercial existing flu amendment and the residential, do you know what the yield would be for residential units if it were to remain under the commercial FLU? I know you said you could still do residential, it's restricted, it has to be primarily commercial. Do you know what the difference is just by?
I'm not sure I understand what you're actually asking for
So
commercial.
right
versus
now with the
residential.
commercial flu, they said if it stayed that way, they could build residential, but the residential it's primarily, the driving factor has to be a commercial property.
Predominantly commercial?
That's correct.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you know the difference. By way of the schools analysis, it shows if it goes to the zoning or the future land use change as requested, it could yield up to 80 some odd units for the 3 acres, which I find really challenging. I couldn't imagine that many units right there. I could be wrong. I don't know. I would ask the applicant what they may be thinking in their projections. But what would the difference be if it were under the commercial flu? What would the residential yield be on that, if you know?
The predominantly commercial, would it be over 50%?
There's a definition. Yes.
We don't remember that by heart.
No,
We can look
I
that
get
up,
it.
but-
I'm asking, and I'm not trying to be difficult for the applicant. I just know that these questions I'm asking now, I think they're important because he's going to get them in the future.
Right.
Because people right now are going to say, it backs up from the light all the way to the substation as it is now. If you add 83 units, I can hear the argument now. I've already heard them, and I'm just
Right,
trying
but Right, and as we know.
Give you a
once-
foreshadowing.
Right, sorry. And once you do that, once you commit to that, you have to realize that once you put the infrastructure in, all the stormwater, the sidewalks, you're not gonna get that calculation,
No, that's what I said, there's no way. Apartments to me on 3 acres didn't make any sense, but then I get there's a residential component, what they could, you put the yield on there. So I'm just trying to find,
Yes, sir. For the predominantly residential development, is development for which more than 2/3 of the development parcel area, or more than 2/3 of the gross floor area within the parcel is devoted to residential use. Okay, that's predominantly residential development. Predominant commercial development, development for which more than 2/3 of the development parcel area, or more than 2/3 of all gross floor area within the parcel devoted to commercial use. So that would be quite expansive to do, especially on that small area. Even if it is approved, when you put the roads in, the stormwater, there's no way they're going to yield that. No way possible. You just don't have to have above the floors and things. They just make everything can be ground level. But even at ground level, you're not going to yield that.
yeah, but you know what I'm trying to do, Horace.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
because if this flue goes through, then they won't have to come for a zoning change to do whatever they want within the reason of the zoning that's there. And that's why I was questioning, why do they have to change it? Because you can still do residential. I get it now, because you can get more of a yield residential.
Right.
That makes sense, but I'm telling you, you're gonna get the rocks thrown at you. How are you gonna deal with it? And they're gonna plus the same reasons. They chose some other apartments not too far from there. The traffic analysis, the traffic study, they're gonna flip out on
Right.
that.
And all of those things, and in the county, we are aware of all of those issues. That's why the engineering department, access and management, we are looking at these things very, very careful, more closely, and if it's required, we let them know at the beginning, you're not going to yield that, try something else.
So
That's why
the-
the pre-app's going to be, very, very critical for them to come through before they start, just come to the
Right.
initial, because if they can't do it at the initial,
Right.
so pre-app's going to be very, very
And
critical.
when you guys said, working with the development on the north side, is there a way that they can make access over to, Bower Road? Or is that Sorrento? I always forget. Sorrento, I'm sorry. Yeah, Sorrento. Is that what you all were indicating? Like, when you say to the north, because that's the Winn-Dixie cut through with about 287 speed bumps in the Winn-Dixie parking lot. But, I'm just wondering if they're trying to get through, because to the right's the substation. There is a little pathway back there where they get their gas. There is a road behind, to some degree, behind the Winn-Dixie that goes out to Sorrento, but I didn't know if that's what you're talking about. Is there anything on the plans? I'd ask the developer, work with, okay.
I think we're trying to get that access into the actual development.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right, well, fair warning, good luck.
All right. If we've got no further questions, I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll motion to approve.
All right, we've got a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion on this item? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All right, all those opposed? Motion carries 5-1. All right, and now we'll move on to our next case. A public hearing concerning the review of an ordinance amending the future land use map, SSA-2023-08, that the board review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners an ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the FLU, Policy FLU 1-1-1, to provide an amendment to the 2030 FLU map, SSA-2023-08, changing the FLU category of 2 parcels located within Section 14, Township 1N, Range 31W, parcel number 14-1N-31-6000-002-016, and 14-1N, 31-6000-019-016, totaling 20.06 plus or minus acres, located on Old Novak Road, from mixed-use suburban to agricultural. All right. At this time, if we could have the applicant come forward and please state your case. Is the applicant Mitch Hazelbaker? Okay. If you just state your name and address for us, and then kind of tell us a little bit about the project, then we'll let staff go ahead.
My name's Mitch Hazelbaker. Live at 890 Old Novak Road. Brought this property recently. Moved down here from Indiana. Family's got a strong farm background. Come down here basically to start over and kind of homestead here. Got this 20 acres. When we purchased this, we were told that, you know, we could have animals. We drove around, we saw animals in the neighborhood and everything. Purchased the property, then we found out the zoning of the future land use was wrong, and so we were here requesting it be reverted back to agriculture like it was prior to the sale for us to continue. I'll give you a little bit here of the breakdown. Like I said, when we purchased the home, we were told that it was zoned agriculture, allowing us to keep our animals on the property. We know that is not the case, and changing the land to put no additional stress on the county infrastructure. The property itself is on a septic. Utilities are provided by Gonzales Water Company and ECUA. We keep a dumpster on the property that's emptied once a week. None of the services would need to change in any way, nor would our change of the future land use put any additional stressors on the services provided in the addressers. The home itself is in a trust and will not be developed into multifamily homes or additional homes on the lot. No additional strain on the educational system, transportation, DOT for the area. And it provides proposed for 50 acres or less. The amendment does not involve text change to the goals, policy, objectives of the local government's comprehensive plan, but only proposes land use change to the land use map site-specific activity. The property is subject to proposed amendment and not located in an area of critical state and concern. We intend to keep our farm animals that we bought from Indiana down here that have been with our family for nearly a dozen years and keep continuing to grow and build a healthy relationship with the county extension office and local 4-H program, assisting in educational purposes. We'll continue to abide by all local, state, animal welfare codes, and just want to add to that since moving down here, found out that this home has a lot of historical value to it. If you're familiar, it's the old Tate Farm. When the Spanish settled here, it was built for the school teacher, so it's one of the, if it's not the oldest schoolhouse in Escambia County, it's one of. And so we're working with the Historical Society's been in it. We know that Andrew Jackson was there 3 times because of the close proximities to the rivers. So there's a lot of historical value. Keeping this in an agriculture where it will not be developed leaves those artifacts that might be there in effect. There's a lot of wildlife there. We want to keep that in effect. I come from Indiana, where I lived out in the country. My neighbor was 2 miles away. Development came in, you know, we saw the urban sprawl. I know it all happens in waves. It's happened here before. Now it's hitting again. It's hitting here, down here harder. You know, you're looking at vertical going up with some of these housing and stuff. This helps offset your density, maintaining this small farm of 20 acres. You know, that can offset some of your numbers that way, keeping your wildlife in check. Our family's been in farming since 1986. When we bought this property, we didn't realize the crime that had went on in this house prior to us purchasing this house. Speaking with law enforcement and fire and EMS, this is one of the heaviest run houses in the county for call load for drug and trafficking problems. We've cleaned that up. part of my delay and getting this property where I want it is just we keep running into so much trash that is buried there. And you guys know it's costly to get equipment to do all this stuff. And that's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to run any big farming operation or anything like that. Just want to be able to maintain our horses, cattle, you know, and live off the land. Excuse me. Farming has taught me an awful lot, made me who I am. I want to bring it to my grandchildren. That's what I want. That's what I want with this 20 acres. We're putting it in a trust to continue, keep this going. And I would like for your recommendation to revert this back to future land use of ag. We want to live off the land and treat our neighbors respectfully, you know. And that's about all I got.
All right, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions at this time for the applicant? All right, staff, I'll let you go into your presentation.
Allison Lindsay, Urban Planner Development Services. So this is the location map showing the 890 Old Novak. This is the 500-foot radius zoning map showing LDR and surrounding. This is the current future land use of mixed-use suburban and all its surrounding mixed-use suburban. This is a proposed future land use from mixed-use suburban to ag. This is the wetlands map. And this is the aerial photo of the site. Now I do want to notice that if you notice, this looks like one parcel. It was two. The applicant had gone to the property appraiser and had it combined into one. This is the public notice sign that was posted on site. And this was a replacement sign because it was missing the day after it was placed, so we took a picture of the second sign. This is looking onto the subject property from Old Novak. And this is just another view of the subject property. This is looking down the driveway of the subject property. This is looking north along Old Novak. This is looking south along Old Novak. Looking west across Old Novak toward, across the railroad tracks toward 29. And that's the maps and pictures. So this is a small scale request to go from mixed use suburban to agricultural. A future land use change from mixed use suburban to agricultural will allow farm animals within the existing zoning. However, the change to the future land use designation would not be consistent with the current zoning of low density residential, which is a single family residential district that does not allow farm animals other than chickens. The existing and proposed future land use categories are described in the comp plan and summarized below. So right here, it just tells you the mixed use suburban and then the agricultural intended uses for both. For the comprehensive plan map amendment compliance review, the conversion to agricultural would provide for agricultural, silvicultural, residential, recreation, public, and civic, limited ancillary or supportive, and commercial. The change to agriculture would promote incompatible development, allowing for the uses that are best in a rural area. For the professional practices, the requested future land use change does not utilize good planning principles for this single-family residential area. The existing future land use for this property and the surrounding area is all mixed-use suburban. A change to agriculture would allow more intense agricultural uses not allowed within the LDR residential district. For the future land use amendment, the state has 3 requirements and in order to be adopted as a small-scale amendment. So this one, it does meet that it's a 20.5 plus or minus acre, which is less than the 50 acres required. It does not involve a text change of the comprehensive plan, only a change to the land use map. And the property is not in the subject of a proposed amendment, is not in a area of critical concern. The proposed amendment meets the criteria established by this. However, the change would not be consistent with the surrounding mixed-use suburban future land use or the current zoning of the subject parcel or the adjacent and surrounding residential. So if the change to the future land use is agricultural, it would not be consistent with the current low-density residential. For other applicable comprehensive plan objectives, the proposed agricultural FLU would not be as suitable in the residential zoning district. If approved, the change would not be consistent with the zoning and would allow special privileges such as farm animals that would be prohibited to other properties in the area. Future land use, the map designation, the future land use categories adjacent to and surrounding the subject parcel are mixed-use suburban. The change to agricultural would change the area's characteristics by allowing farm-based activities to include farm animals and other heavy agricultural uses and activities in the low-density residential neighborhood. For infrastructure, the property currently has a home on the land and is utilizing the existing infrastructures. And as the applicant has stated, there's no proposed new development. But if there was any development or activities, then a full development review would be required. For concurrency management, the parcel does meet the facilities and services because it's already an existing using the utilities and services. And the existing single family is using the septic tanks and the potable water is provided by Gonzalez Utilities. The Traffic and Transportation Department had no concerns regarding traffic capacity for Old Novak Road. Protected resources for wellhead. This subject property is outside of any existing wellhead protection areas according to our Escambia County GIS map. For historical significant sites, the applicant provided, they sent a letter to the state of Florida. However, the applicant nor I had gotten any reply from the agency. And so prior to any future development, a historical analysis must be completed. For wetlands and habitat, there is a pond on site closest to the old Novak Road, but there's no indication from the National Wetlands Inventory that there are wetlands on this parcel. If there are any protected trees are located for any future development, they'd have to be analyzed for compliance and any other applicable environmental regulations prior to development approval. The request to change the future land use from mixed-use suburban to agricultural is not compatible or suitable for the existing land use or zoning patterns in the area. The zoning is low-density residential, which is strictly a single-family residential, one house per lot. And if this amendment is approved, it would create an inconsistency between the zoning and land use on the parcel as well as with the surrounding parcels. And as I stated, if this amendment was approved, a full development review would be necessary prior to any additions or developments on the parcel. And that's end of the analysis.
Thank you. Is there any questions for staff at this time?
Steph, so I think what we're arguing here about is the use, right? I mean, I get that we'd like the color of the map to all look the same and everything to look consistent, but it sounds like it's simply what the gentleman can and cannot do on his piece of property. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir, because in low-density residential, just alone, the permitted uses do not allow farm animals. They have, mixed-use suburban has a limited agricultural, but that is just for the personal consumption for growing vegetables, but not for farm animals. And the compatibility between the future land use of mixed-use suburban and agricultural, we do have a definition for incompatibility, but it is not compatible.
And I would like to add on that, Mr. Powell. And I would like to add, the definition for compatibility is very, very critical. Go back to the map. Go to that map. Yes, yes. As you can see, that area, that is a predominantly low-density mixed-use suburban area that's surrounded by single-family homes. Now, there could be some animals there, could be. But when you're going to put agriculture there, It's more than just farm animals. Operations including more intensive farm animals, as Allison stated. It could be a litany of animals that potential could have much more of an intrusive use in that area. So, and one of the components of the comprehensive plan and the land development code is to preserve the existing character of existing neighborhoods. So, but I want to get to this point. The definition for incompatibility, which is a requirement for any development in the land development code and the comprehensive plan, it states this. The definition for compatibility, for the record, a condition in which land uses, activities, or condition can coexist in a relative proximity for each other in a stable fashion over time, such that no use or activity or condition is unduly, negatively impacted directly or indirectly by another use, activity, or condition. Look at the map and just think about the potential of detriment that can occur. Now, there's a strict definition for incompatibility that's inside the comprehensive plan. Incompatibility / the compatibility development. Incompatibility development is new development proposed to be constructed next to existing development, wherein the proximity of the two kinds of development would each diminish the usefulness of the other or would be detrimental to existing operations. The incompatibility can arise from either land use or structure, size, and design. Compatibility development is new development proposed to be constructed next to existing development in which the proximity of the two kinds of development, which each complement or enhance the usefulness of the other. That's why staff is saying that this does not meet that definition. Because when you're bringing in those much more intensive, intrusive agricultural uses in a predominantly low suburban area, that's a problem. I mean, and one thing, planning scholars, they don't like using this. They say you'll know incompatibility when you see it. So, Mr. Powell, the maps, they do matter, but more importantly is the uses, the impact they can have on each other.
So back to, you stated earlier, if he wanted to start a large agricultural business, he would have to come before you though, correct, for that to be approved?
Yes.
Okay, so then we're talking about land use. I'm curious, Mr. Speaker, if we have speakers against his nefarious use of horses and animals here. I mean, I get it. I totally understand your point of view and respect it. But I mean, golly, listen to the guy, what he wants to do. It doesn't sound terrible to me, but hey, I'm not living next door, so I'm curious to hear if we have speakers against it.
Well, Mr. Powell, also, if you change the future land use to agricultural, if you look at the chart on chapter 3, it will be totally inconsistent with the zoning of low-density residential. And that's more in line with agricultural RR, rural mixed use type zonings versus single-family residential, where you have the farm animals, the horses, the cows, the pigs, the goats, whatever, right next to someone's home, which would be more.
It could be challenging.
Yes.
And also, and we do have, and for the record, we do have, and you can, if y'all want them to speak, they can. It's your discretion. But we do have code enforcement here, and they have and they have some knowledge on this. That's up to the board. But code enforcement, they are here, and they're here for a purpose.
All right, anyone? We do have speakers for this case, so if we want to go ahead and jump into that. All right, our first speaker is Michael Colucci. I hope I got that right. If you could just please. I did. Awesome.
Surprising how many people mispronounce it. In the Army, my lieutenant used to call me Colossal. I accepted it. His name was Jedpelski. Nobody could say that except me.
Okay, if you'll just state your name and address for the record.
Michael Colucci, 728 Candy Lane, right across the street from the property. And the bottom of my property is within 500 feet of the house. Now, if I was a good actor, I could shed some tears. I've lived in country most of my life, woods all around me, starting in kindergarten. Always loved the woods. We moved here 22 years ago from South Florida. We did escape that urban sprawl and moved to a place where I thought it's never going to happen again. Unfortunately, we lived on South 97, few miles away, and it was countrified. And all of a sudden on that road, big development started coming in. And I said, let's move. So we moved just a couple of miles away to a place that looked like country. In fact, I found 3 acres that was solid woods. You could hardly walk through it. But we got it cleared. We moved there. My daughter lives next door with her family and grandkids. My son lives next door. That's our whole family, kids and grandkids. And they loved it because the traffic, which was on 97, they didn't have to face anymore, going to work or school. I've always loved farms. I've always loved country. I always loved animals. I was not aware of this. I love that piece of property that they live on. I love the whole 100 acres. It scares me, the possibility of all that extra traffic. I wasn't going to mention this, but Mitch did. It's historical significance. When the king granted Manuel Gonzalez his land grant, it went from 9 Mile Road to Barano Park and from river to river. But it's called cantonment. That's not the cantonment. That 100 acres is where Andrew Jackson stationed his troops. That's the cantonment. I don't know why it's density. I think it should be changed to a historical site. And I would hate to see that change. I'm glad it's wetlands on that part. That means that will stay woods, I hope. I've been there. The way those animals are kept, it's probably cleaner than a zoo. I mean, they are so well kept. I just love the place. And the pond, which is toward the front, it slopes down, so it's really a retention pond for everything in the area that slopes down there. And I love looking at it every time I walk by, every time I drive by. And I hope, does that mean I'm out of time?
Yeah, I'll let you finish up there real
Okay,
quick.
I just hope you can get it in your hearts to let Mitch keep it the way it is. I wish you'd go and visit the place so you could see for yourself.
So you'd like to see it
Stay
to agriculture?
agricultural.
Okay.
Just the way it is. It's a beautiful piece of property as far as I'm concerned. If I could have afforded it a few years ago, I'd have bought it myself.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next up, we've got Dorothy Johnson. If you'll please come up, state your name and address for the record, and your time will start.
Dorothy Johnson, 1382 Kathleen Avenue, Cantonment. This property is right on the back of my property, and it's going to cause, the property is low density now, so you can have an animal or two, but as far as putting in a stable, doing a whole bunch of plowing and stuff for farming, it's going to affect me in the runoff with the smells, the sound, and the culture, because it's low density now, and I like to keep it at that.
All right. Thank you so much. Charles Johnson, you're next. If you'll come up, state your name and address for the record.
I'm Charles Johnson, 1382 Kathleen Avenue. I'm listening to people talk about historical significance. I've lived in Gonzales, as I know it. and with Andrew Jackson or whoever that is. Bless his soul. He didn't do nothing for me, but as far as the horses and the cows and stuff, I grew up with them. I don't want that noise anymore. I can listen to the rooster crowing, but I don't want to hear the horses doing their thing, and I don't know how many of it is. And I've been living in my house since 1975, but I'm 77, and I grew up on Roberts Road, and I know Angela, Cantonment, Gonzales, Powelton, and all the other areas in that area, and the impact that it would have for putting that type of structure or business is what it's going to end up being, a business in there. It's going to change what's going on in our neighborhood, and I kind of want to see it like it's been all the time.
Thank you so much. Next, we've got Janice Bailey King. If you'll please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Janice Bailey King, and I live at 711 Candy Lane. We've lived there at that house probably about 3 years now, but my husband's family lived there all of his life. And when Mitch and them came there and they bought their animals, if anything ever happened to me, I wouldn't mind being one of their animals because they're very took care of, never smell them. And our house sits here, and their house is right behind us. In fact, we have a gate that goes back there. And I usually go for therapy or whatever over there and play with the animals, feed the animals. And they have started working with the boys' clubs, showing kids how to plant flowers, doing agricultural stuff, which is important these days. And as far as the land part, I'd like for it to go back to what it was, for them to be able to continue that stuff for kids and stuff. But the main thing is, later on, I don't want big complexes of houses and condominiums. I think in the future of 2030, they had a new development of sequence of stuff, what the projective thing is. And it shows a lot of growth out there, a lot of buildings out there, and the people in that area love the quietness, the serenity of the beauty of the area that's around Candy Lane and Novak and the other areas. And I just want to get it to where he would be able to do things with kids, future stuff for America, for the kids.
Thank you for speaking.
Yes.
Oh, I was saying thank you for speaking.
Okay, thank you.
What's there? Russell King. Yeah, Cheryl Norton. What's that?
Cheryl Norton, 838 Candy Lane, and I just wanted to come to this meeting just to find out what was actually going on. I did not understand all of it. We have lived there since 1983, built our house there in residential, the LDR, and that's exactly how I would like it for it to stay. We raised our boys there. I understand his, Mr. Hazelbaker, preference and what he would like to do with this land. When he moved from Indiana, he should have researched that, I feel like, prior to this. If this was his desire to put animals on this piece of land, he should have looked at the zoning. If he would like to do that, and I think what he's saying about historical, it's always been that way, yes, But if if this is your heart's desire and this is what they want to do and teach, do businesses and bring people in, then I feel like they need to go north and buy land there if that's their heart's desire. I really feel like if it's agricultural, and then what would happen if he also wanted to just move back or move or sell this property years to come, or his family does, who's to say that agricultural would not come in and do something more to this property than what he wants done to it now? I know I have a concern because when I do walk our road, the cul-de-sac, and it backs up to their property, there is already somebody with large farm animals on the cul-de-sac on Kathleen, I think it is, and there is an odor, a smell. Maybe they don't keep him as well as his animals, I'm sure, but you know, I have a concern for that, and that's only a couple that I understand. I don't know, does that mean just on this property, if it's agricultural, does that affect people that live near me? Could they do the same? I don't understand that, so I don't know. I just prefer how I've bought a property and how it is now, and let it continue that way as LDR. Thank you.
Allison, could I ask a question? So it's currently zoned LDR, which is 4 dwelling units per acre. So there's nothing stopping him from coming in here and putting in maybe 80 homes on this property, if he so desired, if it remained LDR? So that'd be a nice alternative, wouldn't it?
That's a possibility, but it would have to come through the development review and all the infrastructure, and now it's on septic. But I do want to kind of clarify, since I have the microphone at this moment. It was never agricultural.
Never.
It was with the 2020 flu. It was mixed. It was MU6.
Absolutely.
And then the zoning was, when it was the 2 parcels, it was VR2 and V5. So it's not like it would go back to what it was, because it was not agricultural zoned.
Right,
And I'd like to add something. See, that's what we talk about compatibility. Again, even if a subdivision did want to go there, it's in the midst of subdivisions. Now, of course, they won't be able to do all that because of all of the wetlands, the property. But it would be compatible for single-family homes that are already there. Now, of course, that many units not going there, it cannot because of the wetlands, clearly. But going back to try to bring in a use that's not compatible, because again, agriculture uses, they do bring in challenges. I mean, that's just, it does. I lived in the area. It does. When the wind start kicking up, it causes a problem. So those are the things that we got to be concerned about, the impact and the potential impacts that all of those uses can bring.
Well,
Compatibility is an issue.
I understand, and I believe that Mr. Ingwell's point is that for those who want to keep it the same, I bet you anything but that will happen, regardless of what happens here today. Because the owner could, and I'm speaking for you, I'm speaking for myself, that if it doesn't work out, and I understand why, it makes perfect sense on paper why it shouldn't work out, but the owner has every right to sell it to somebody who would get up to probably that same yield. The wetlands are on the property adjacent to it, not on that. The majority of them are there. So let's say it's not 80, it's 60 homes. So I doubt that you're going to, I doubt anything's going to stay the same, and nothing up north or out Perdido. I mean, that's what we're all here fussing about, because everything is changing. It's going to change, and that's a fact, no matter where we are. But I just find this refreshing, quite frankly, because it's always the opposite argument we have in this room, right? I agree. I mean, it is. And I would like to live in a panacea that thinks that this guy's never going to do anything, have a beautiful little farm that everybody likes. But, I mean, to Horace's point, their job is to do what they're doing. I understand it, but I just want the people that are here to say, when they say, I want it to stay that way, I have a feeling, based upon this, it will or it won't. And it may be opposite of what you think. Because, I mean, if I wanted to do and sell it, I would sell it. I mean, I think there's probably a line of guys that would want to buy this to build on that piece of property. Just guessing.
All right. Next, we got Gail Hicks. If you'll please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Wow. Gail Hicks, 900 Candy Lane. I've lived on Candy Lane for 42 years. Part of Candy Lane is a private road. It has approximately 15 residence homes built on that end. We do have a homeowners association. It is inactive because we prefer it that way. We're a quiet neighborhood. The name of it was given Hidden Valley because nobody knew it was back there. And we do have a bylaws that match basically what you read earlier about no farm animals, chickens only. I would like to say I appreciate everything that's been said here. I came to find out more information about it. The biggest concern that I have in the presentation by Mr. Hazelmaker was the fact that he used the word cattle. And when I think of cattle, I think out west, and I think of more than one or two. And I understand that this property, as it has shown on the map, is surrounded by single home residential areas. I do understand it could go up for sale tomorrow and something could come in there, but I know that that would have to go through a lot of process. My husband him and his father bought the end of Candy Lane, and there's a lot of wetland, there's a lot of lowland, there's a lot of area that you cannot put a residential home on. So I would just like to state that for the record, and fact that it is a hidden paradise back there. It's quiet, and we love it that way. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, then I've got Adria Colucci, and you indicated you do not want to speak. Is that correct? Or do you, of course, if you'll just please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Adria Colucci, 728 Candy Lane. The question came up from one of the speakers about whether if he changed to agricultural would affect our zoning on Candy Lane. Our zoning on Candy Lane is not being changed, so I don't think that affects it. We're just talking about these 20 acres. And personally, we get more smell, and we very seldom get it from the paper mill than we do from any of the animals, even close to Kathleen, which is much further down from those 20 acres. It is a beautiful place. I understand that someday in the future he could sell it, something could change, but it would have to go through some kind of process, I'm sure. And they do keep that place nice, and we made our business after we got that notice to go and see what was going on. So we're not just talking about driving by. And the way the animals are being cared for, and the neighbors that butt up right against their property, that's Ms. King, they don't have any problems with what they're doing in there in terms of the smell or anything else. And with wetlands on one side and us being residential over here, we're not going to be changed by what's going on here. We're still going to retain what we are today on Candy Lane, correct? Just because if they were to get that variance.
Yes.
So I have no problem with them getting the variance.
This request is only for Mr. Hazelbaker's property, and it will not change your zoning or land
I
use.
just wanted to clarify.
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Thank you so much. Next, we've got Carolyn Bramblett. If you please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Carolyn Bramblett, 976 Kathleen Avenue. So Mr. Hazelbaker, who we all know his name because we've been forced to learn it because of the trouble that he's brought since he came into the neighborhood. They paint a great picture, these kind, wonderful people, but you have these people next to him that, you know, they all sound so sweet, but you heard them refer to the 100 acres in the area. Mr. Hazelbaker says we. Mr. Hazelbaker is the only name on the deed, but he lives with Bobby Lee Sales, and whatever dubious relationship they have, she has wreaked havoc in the neighborhood. She is a pathological liar. She claims ownership of Mary Lynn Thompson's property. She's claimed ownership of Rami Vana's 50-plus acres that separate Kathleen from Hazelbaker's property. She claims ownership of Hazelbaker's property. She is a pathological liar. You saw her probably in all the arrest stuff yesterday.
Please keep it to Please
Well, the
address
thing
us,
is,
please.
the thing is so she everything that they get given, so that he wants more rights to his property, but she has come on other people's property on our street, trying to get through their yard to put up no trespassing signs to land that is not hers. That's a package deal. They are liars. They have code enforcement is a problem. There's a house now on the pond that they didn't even get permission to put on there. Nothing that they do is ethical. This is how they live. And this is what they brought into the neighborhood. I've lived there since 1989, if time matters. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, we've got Kim Smith. If you'll please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
It's Kim Smith, 1132 Kathleen Avenue. I have lived there 15 years. I don't really understand. The property behind where I live is wetland, so I don't understand how the back 15 acres of his property is not wetland because it's all marshy. Not everything he said was true. He did bring horses from Indiana. Most of the rest of them have been bought locally. They do not take care of them. They do not have shelter. There's a large majority of them that have mysteriously died since they have been in their care. I have pictures of some of them where his daughter has been posting they plan to do hunting, camping, fishing retreats on that land. That's why they brought that cabin in. They plan to make a business out of it. They have the business license already. It's online. I'm really surprised his daughter isn't here to speak because she's been advertising this everywhere, but I think she may still be in jail. The last year they have lived there has been terrible. They have harassed everyone for a mile in each direction. All of it's public record, code, the sheriff's office, like county commissioners, like it's unbelievable the problems that they have caused. And there's a dozen homes that are going to be affected, more than a dozen homes, if they bring in more animals. Not to mention I worry about the animals because, like I say, they've had quite a few of them die. And I don't just mean one or two. There was a couple of I think it's Highland cattle, there was pigs, there was goats, there was a bunch of birds. Like, it's just gonna cause more trouble for us, more traffic, more trouble. And they've already messed up everything since they've been there. So please don't give them any more leadway in making a mess out of where we live.
Thank you. Next, we've got Mary Lynn Thompson. If you'll please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
It's Mary Lynn Thompson, and I own, I own part on Novak Road. My family has owned the property over 100 years. So I'm probably the oldest landowner up there, on both sides of the tracks, actually. I don't know anything about what the last two speakers spoke about. That's a police matter, enforcement matter. If enforcement needs to come up and speak, I would encourage them to do so. I do know that I've had problems on my property, and so much to the fact that I have an order that anyone on my property is to be arrested. Period. End of story. Unless they can pick up the phone and call me, because the kids sometimes go there. As far as the zoning goes, I'd like to ask a question about before the 2020, because I know at one point in time it was zoned agricultural, as was the property next door to it. It actually fed most of the workers at St. Regis off of farmland. That's what it was originally. The development, we've had some questions about development. If you look on the property, at one point in time, there was a development drawn up for the entire 75 acres. Okay, there's 75 acres total in that little spot. It is true they could come in, a new developer could come in, if it's left as it is, a new developer can come in and put houses back along Candy Lane. Y'all really don't want that, I don't think. I kind of like having the woods. That's why it's not been done anything with it. Mentioned Andrew Jackson coming through there. Yeah, he did. My grandfather was with him, or great-grandfather was with him. There's also a rock pile that is on the property next door for those members of the community that remember back when it was actually called Gonzales and not Cantonment, where the kids would go get a rock off the railroad track and go say their prayers before they walked to school. Okay, so there's a lot of historic. Mr. and Mrs. Woods used to own the property. They had duck pond. That was what that little pond up front's called. It was a duck pond. It's a spring-fed pond. It is not a retention pond. Mr. Nowak, he had the swamparium down the road. First zoo up there. A lot of the animals that were caught on this property that were taken up to him, and he would have petting zoos for the kids. So I understand that portion of his vision and keeping it normal. There are no wetlands on his parcel that I am aware of, and I'm probably one of the very few that have walked that property. Of course, it's been many years, but the wetlands are on the parcel next door. It is a developable piece of property, and I am in real estate. I'm well aware of what the development codes are. I come down here quite often. Let's see if there's anything else. All right, Ms. King mentioned the animals. There's plenty of horse farms along Kathleen, and they are correct with the St. Regis smell is much worse. And that's all.
Thank you.
Can I get a response to my question about the zoning?
Yes.
The previous zoning from years past?
Sure.
Yes. So the front half of the property, before they combined it, was VR2. The back half was V5. I'm sorry. And the VR2 did allow for agricultural farm animals.
With only certain limitations. Be very, very careful. Only certain limitations. The back portion of V5 was a single-family dwelling district only, which it would be consistent. I've been working with for a long time. So that part, V5 would be consistent with the single-family homes that's out there. So it was a split zoning at the time. So that's why we got to be very, very careful, just making broad sweeps and broad generalizations. That's why we try to work with what we have here today, because you got to know the rest of the provisions that come along with those old zoning categories.
Yeah, so VR2 did allow for that, and the V5 was the back half. And unfortunately, the applicant stated that when he bought the property, he was told that he could have farm animals. Now, whether he listened to his real estate broker or some other agent, but the applicant, as far as we know, they did not come in and talk to staff to verify, that, and that happens often. And we try to tell people, before you buy, talk to us, call us so we can inform you on, your permitted uses, any wetlands, any airfield, any overlays, that sort of thing. So we keep trying to tell the public, come talk to us. Don't believe your real estate agent, because they may not always be aware of everything. Not anything against real estate agents, but I mean.
All right.
And therefore, certain actions were done not according to the provisions of the Land Development Code. That's why certain other agencies within the Escambia County got deeply involved, because of certain unpermitted uses were done and activities were done that were not per the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you. Board member, staff has indicated that code enforcement is here. If we have any questions, I don't know if anyone did have questions for code enforcement or wish to hear from them.
I'd like to hear from.
All right.
Hi, I'm Officer Butler with Code Enforcement. We do have a case against this property. It's mainly for, well, like Ms. Allison has said, it was 2 parcels at one point. In the very front where the little pond is, there is a structure. It was called a shed, but they're saying that it's not. I have spoken to Ms. Bobby. that is not permitted onto the land, or they haven't come in to get a permit for it. And also because of the property not being agriculture, they cannot have the farm animals, such as the horses, chickens, well, they can't have chickens, I'm sorry, goats. I was told there was cattle on there. I haven't been permitted onto the property. As you've seen from their pictures, there is a long driveway. We can't go onto the property if there's a gate. So I haven't been onto the property, but the complainant has been sending me photos of the property, so I was able to see it. What questions do you have for me?
When did the enforcement issues start for y'all? Was it at the time of the building permit, or was there anything prior to the building?
It started, there was 2 cases that we just combined and put into one. It started in April of this year, and then the second one for the animals was in May.
It was the complaint about the animals just because their animals were there and they're not supposed to be.
And they're not permitted to be on that land for that zoning.
Anyone else?
Has the applicant been cooperative to?
The lady has, but again, I haven't been onto the property. I have asked her, hey, let me see what's going on. That way I can help you out a little bit more, but I have not been onto the property. We have just been permitted to go ahead and go to hearing with code enforcement, and that will be August 22nd.
The current content in the complaints in your paperwork right now, if today's case were approved for the applicant, does your code enforcement case go away?
Half of it. So if it did get rezoned to agriculture, then they'll be able to keep the animals, then that part goes away. But as for the shed part, the little building, that's where the pond is, no, they still supposed to come in for a permit for that. So that will be the only thing else.
And also too, let me clarify something. And even if there's something, because see, in speaking with them, there's some type of commercial operation that they are planning on, that they're doing, so that will require site plan review. From what they present, from what the facts are, they're not adding up. So therefore, we're gonna have to, whatever it is, the situation is, a full site plan, we're gonna need it. If not, code enforcement have to get involved. Not that we're trying to do anything, we just gotta make sure that the provisions of the law is applied for equally and across the board.
Is our attorney here? New attorney? I'm sorry, I haven't met you yet. Hey, Tim. Well, I'm curious how we can entertain this if there's something pending that what we do has effect directly to it. I'm wondering why we're even fooling with this. I mean, no offense to anybody. I understand why they paid for it. We hear it. But my question, I guess, to you for legal, should we be? Should we have something that may have bearing on a case that's already in motion?
These are separate matters. These are separate matters, so I don't see a direct concern related to this.
Okay. Thank you.
I can appreciate that legal statement, but personally, I don't want to be judge, jury, executioner on a matter that is so impactful to a neighborhood that is currently in the throes of a county oversight situation.
And yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Fierce, but that's why the planning board have to look at the facts, not emotions, not what they think, not what they won't think that may be good, but the facts. The issue of compatibility, that is a critical point, compatibility. What looks good, feel good, proper, sounds good, reasonable, what we would like, but the facts of what the state compatibility. So those are the things that, as he stated, that can be sort of looked at separately. Is mixed use suburban, AG, and all of the potential uses, not just a chicken or a goat, all of the potential uses. And that's what this board look at, the impact of the entire area. Not just if it feels good or it sounds good or it's a good idea. Respectfully.
Yeah, we have no more speakers. I would allow for the applicant to come back and address any issues that you may wish to.
Again, I appreciate your time. Kind of goes back to the old question of which came first, chicken or the egg. Everybody's got different opinions. This house was here a long time. The property was here a long time. When I moved here, one of the first things I had to address was a water leak. Because my water comes in on the backside of Russell's property, comes over there. My house was built there before everything on Candy Lane was built there. So I had to, fix my water line over on their property. There's been cattle there, when Russell was there and stuff, through the woods as the people had owned it prior. They spoke about us having cattle that had died. We had 2 Highland bulls, pretty good high dollar bulls, and we went to the sale barn up in Atmore, and my daughter seen a couple cows she wanted. Well, when we brought them back, they brought back disease. The disease got the whole herd affected. Even with vet care, we had vet care out there and did everything we could to try to salvage them, but we didn't survive them. That's farming. Things happen like that. It's not for lack of care, not for lack of trying. So I understand people are concerned about the smell and this and that. Like I said, we drove down here. There's horses and cattle and stuff in the neighborhood, whether it's allowed or not, it's there. You drive out this whole county, you can see it, it's there. We're just trying to do what's right. The biggest part of the stuff, looking at the map, on the right side of our property is 80 acres is there, is all marsh, so it's all buffered, really doesn't affect anybody. We had intentions of trying to buy that, but finances couldn't go through because of the fact that it was so much marsh. So we couldn't get it financed. But we're just trying to keep the family trust going. And when we talk about, they want to know about the number of cattle, typically what we do is raise freezer beef. It's a small herd operation where, less than a dozen, where we would sell them to families. If we ever venture to get into it that far. And we just basically want to live off the land, maintain the wildlife and historical value. I appreciate your time, and do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board. So at this point, if we have a motion that's on the table for this case, I will entertain something from anyone. Or if there's any discussion that you'd all like to have.
I was asking for all the discussion, and, we got it. So we got good, bad, and the ugly. And while, like you said, it sounds like a great use of the property, I'd love to hear it. And I hate that I think some people will be in here fussing about what may be there next, but it doesn't look good for what he's hoping to do and the panacea that he painted a picture of. I wish that were the case. I wish they could leave it like that for everybody here, but it doesn't seem like it's going down that road. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Inkwell.
I agree with you. I know where this is going.
I would say with all the unbuttoned matters at hand, and just the facts of the case that staff has presented, maybe something could be done in the future with the historical value and different things, but at this point, and I'll go ahead and make a motion, I think this committee should maintain status quo and deny the application. So I make a motion to deny case 2023-08.
All right, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a second. Any other discussion on this item? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries. All right, next we have a discussion item, an action/discussion item with UWF Development Agreement. Thank you guys for patiently waiting with us. Better this month than last month, I can tell you. You ready to walk us through this, if you would?
I guess I'm going to.
Great.
So what we have here is an updated development agreement between the county and the University of West Florida. As you recall, we've come through with their campus master plan update, and I don't remember the yearly cycle that we come through with these development agreements, but we do. This is the latest updated version based on their master plan.
All right. And we've got some representatives here from the university. If y'all want to add anything to this at all. And thank y'all for being here with us today.
Good morning. I'm Mel Manor with the University of West Florida. This is the 2023 proposed campus development agreement. We've just brought before this board back late last year the new campus master plan, which was reviewed, and then it was adopted by our Board of Trustees December the 15th of 2022. And this new campus development agreement is in conjunction with that. Our current development agreement was adopted in 2014 for a period of 10 years, and so this would replace it. It's been reviewed by our council and the county attorney, and it just provides update in conjunction with the new master plan. But we're here if you have any questions.
Okay. Great. Does anybody have any questions for?
Is it true this is that UWF has the largest owned landmass that's undeveloped in the state university system? I ask, I'm a Florida State alumni, which from my understanding, they have the least amount of property. So I'm kind of excited for UWF. That
Yeah, we, on our main campus, we have 1,600 acres. I believe that the University of Florida has acquired some land recently, so that they may have gone ahead of us, but previously we were the largest land mass in the 12 universities in the university system.
Well, you know I'm rooting for you. For exciting.
You got any other questions, or are we all good?
I just want to see this master plan on like the, 12 one go through. So that's my biggest thing.
Yes.
Definitely want to see positive growth up there.
Great. All right, so we need a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second? All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right. Well, thanks. Thank you for hanging in there with us. All right. Horace, do you have anything?
First of all, I want to thank you, board, for everything that you're doing. I know it's been the last few cases, the last few sessions. Thank you, Mr. Reed, always. It's been fun, but we really do. I know it takes a lot out of your time, and thank you for being committed to serve on this board. It is not easy, but what y'all do is extremely important for the now and the present of Escambia County. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Horace. County Attorney, do we have anything? Good? All right. Well, then we are adjourned.
The next meeting, before you leave, is going to be September 12th. I did it the second week because the first
'Cause
week's
of
the
Labor Day.
holiday.
Yeah.
So we'll do September 12th. There's an added rezoning, so we'll have one small scale with 5 rezonings. 5. But one goes with the small scale.
Did we get back that one that I called you about that we had coming back from the commission? Or is that just tabled entirely?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. On your minutes that has the 6-month outlook and the previous month review, one of the items that was on 9 Mile that went to the BCC, planning board approved it.
Next to the fire department?
Yes. BCC had remanded it back to the planning board. I've reached out to the agent to let them know, let us know when they would like to bring it back. So if it comes back, I'll let y'all know. But just letting you know that the BCC had remanded it.
You'll give us a little more background when it comes back to us of why they brought it back to us and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I actually had a copy and pasted the motion on the previous, if you don't mind me bringing it up real
I believe
quick.
it was criteria E that was brought up.
Yeah. This was, Burgash recommended remanding back to the planning board with specific instruction that they look specifically at the stormwater and drainage and the historical problems in that area, particularly on the north side of that property. I think the only speakers that showed up were those neighbors on that north side.
Wrong committee.
I feel that's also a DRC one too myself. That's what he mentioned.
Yeah, they had mentioned criteria E. So that's on hold, unless you would like to.
Yeah, I think the historical is the only thing that we're concerned about, but.
Correct. We don't have a submitted plan, anything like that. So I think that was the concern with some of the historical issues in that area that we're trying to get information on.
All right. Good stuff. Well, we're adjourned.